Pricey's nickname for Catherine was the Speckled Hen. After about 18 months, the Speckled Hen was pushing for a lifelong commitment.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 weirdest murder cases of all time.
I said, "Are we talking about one body or two?" And he just turned around and looked at me and he said, 15 or 16.
For this list, we'll be looking at the most bizarre and unusual slayings in all of history. What is the strangest murder case you've ever heard of? Let us know in the comments. Number 10, the Alphabet Murders. In the early 70s, 3 girls from Rochester, New York met their end in a very peculiar fashion. Not only were they all assaulted before losing their lives, but each of their first and last names began with the same letter. Even stranger, their bodies were discovered in towns that also started with that letter. The first victim, Carmen Colon, went missing on November 16, 1971, only to be found 2 days later near Churchville. Next, Wanda Wolkowitz disappeared on April 2, 1973, and was discovered the next morning in Webster. The last victim, Michelle Maenza, was last seen on November 26, 1973, and found 2 days later in Macedon. Despite a long list of possible suspects, the case still remains unsolved.
I'm so sorry, Carla. I can't find him.
Number 9, the I-70 Strangler. Between 1980 and 1991, the body of 12 males were found along the Interstate 70 highway.
And established communications with people in the gay community. And it didn't take long to find out that there were a lot of missing people.
The crimes were attributed to one individual, referred to as the I-70 Strangler, as all 12 victims were killed by strangulation. Most of the victims were last seen in or around gay bars in Indianapolis, leaving with an unidentified man.
Got up on one of the tables at the bar and yelled out, "This guy's a serial killer."
Police investigation produced a list of possible victims, the most notable of which was Herb Baumeister. In 1996, police found the remains of 11 men on Baumeister's property, in connection with a seemingly unrelated string of murders. Before he could be arrested, Baumeister took his own life, leaving many to believe, albeit with very low certainty, that he was the I-70 Strangler. Number 8, the murder of John Price. The murder of John Price by Catherine Knight is still regarded as one of the most gruesome murders in Australian history. Long after her husband deserted her, Knight struck a romantic relationship with Price and later moved in with him. Having had enough of her violent behaviour, Price kicked Knight out of his house, only for her to return on the night of February 29, 2000. While he was asleep, she stabbed him and performed unspeakable acts on his corpse, including planning to serve it cooked to unsuspecting victims.
I then went into the house, and it was just totally horrific, and it was a shock to everybody that had anything to do with that particular crime scene.
After receiving a call from Price's neighbour, police found Knight in his house and arrested her.
It was a knife that cut your meal with, and I aimed it at him and it got him. He was leaning closer than what I thought.
She became the first woman in Australia to receive life imprisonment without parole. Number 7, the death of Candace Newmaker. Born Candace Elmore, this girl was adopted by Jean Newmaker after being removed from her biological parents due to neglect. Newmaker had a hard time adapting to her new environment, which led Jean to seek the help of an unlicensed psychologist named Connell Watkins. On April 19, 2000, during what was termed a rebirthing session, Candace was covered in pillows and blankets, held down, and forced to fight her way out to her adoptive mother. Completely restrained by the weight, the girl was gradually smothered to death. As a result, Watkins was convicted of criminal charges and sentenced to 16 years in prison. Jean, on the other hand, accepted a plea deal in exchange for a 4-year suspended sentence. Number 6, the Jeannette DePalma case. Jeannette DePalma was last seen alive on August 7, 1972, after telling her parents that she was heading out to a friend's house. It would take 6 weeks for her remains to be found in her small town of Springfield, New Jersey. What made this case particularly disturbing is that these were reportedly discovered in the midst of a group of objects that were deemed occultic. Also, no signs of injuries or fractures were found on her body, which led authorities to conclude she had died due to strangulation. In the following weeks, many began speculating that DePalma had been the victim of a satanic sacrifice. Despite these claims, the question of who killed Jeannette DePalma remains unanswered. Number 5. The Crimes of Dennis NILSEN.
I said, "Are we talking about one body or two?" And he just turned round and looked at me and he said, 15 or 16.
Born in Scotland in 1945, Dennis NILSEN moved to London as an adult and joined the Metropolitan Police. While living there, NILSEN would lure men to his apartment with the promise of food or shelter before taking their lives. In total, he was responsible for at least 12 deaths, although his actual victim count is believed to be even higher. After killing them, NILSEN would keep the bodies in his home for weeks, often engaging in lewd acts with them before disposing of them. He was eventually caught in 1983 after a plumber found human remains in the pipes following complaints about a blocked drainage. He was convicted and sentenced to life in prison, where he died in 2018. Number 4. The Crimes of TAMARA SAMSONOVA. Also known as the Granny Ripper, TAMARA SAMSONOVA is reported to have committed a series of gruesome murders between 2000 and 2015. Her first alleged victim was her husband, who she reported missing in 2000, and who has never been found dead or alive. After her husband's disappearance, Samsonova began renting out a room in her house and is believed to have murdered several of her tenants. She would then dismember their bodies and dispose of them around her city of St. Petersburg, Russia. Samsonova was arrested in 2015 after the remains of 79-year-old Valentina Ulanova were discovered and traced back to her. She was deemed mentally unfit to stand trial and remanded for life in a psychiatric hospital. Number 3. The Black Dahlia Murder. The Black Dahlia case remains one of the most notorious unsolved murders in American history. On January 15, 1947, the body of 22-year-old aspiring actress Elizabeth Short was found in the Lamert Park neighborhood by a mother walking her young daughter. Not only had Short been murdered, but her corpse had been mutilated afterwards.
You assure the public that you will find the murderer before he strikes again.
I can guarantee you, Mr. Lawler, this killer will be caught.
The case quickly gained infamy as newspapers bestowed upon Short the nickname Black Dahlia and published sensationalized articles about her. In the aftermath, multiple people came forward claiming responsibility, but were eventually let go due to lack of evidence. Despite a lengthy and extensive police investigation that brought forth more than 100 suspects, the true identity of Short's killer is still unknown. Number 2. The Cleveland Torso Murders. In the 1930s, the city of Cleveland, Ohio, was terrorized by a serial killer on the loose. Over the course of 4 years, at least 12 people were murdered and dismembered by the culprit, with their remains scattered around the area. The killer seemed to have targeted drifters and people from marginalized communities, making it hard for authorities to even identify some of them. Of the 12 known victims, 2 were possibly identified as Edward Andrassy and Florence Polillo, while a third victim was suspected to be a woman named Rose Wallace. The particularly gruesome killings left law enforcement baffled and resulted in the largest police investigation in Cleveland history. Regardless, no one has ever been charged with the crimes.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications.
Number 1. The murder of René Hartvelt. René Hartvelt was a Dutch student at the Sorbonne University in Paris. On June 11, 1981, she paid a visit to the apartment of her classmate, Issei Sagawa, where she met a brutal end. Sagawa was a foreign student from Japan who had developed cannibalistic desires from a young age. Once in his house, Sagawa killed Hartvelt and then proceeded to act on those desires. He was arrested 4 days later, but declared mentally unfit for trial and deported to his home country, where he was eventually released due to legal loopholes. He quickly capitalized on his notoriety and became a celebrity of sorts, writing books and making public appearances. Sagawa lived as a free man till his death in November 2022.
たった指先ほどの小さな銃弾を放ったことによってさまざまな人たちを傷つけ、あるいは変えてしまう。
Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from WatchMojo and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.